Hello and welcome to this short Skill Corner video where we're looking at our game intelligence in possession data and specifically our line breaking passes. So what are the difference makers when it comes to Skill Corner's line breaking passes? Well, first of all, not only do we know that a player has made or received a line breaking pass, but we also know the type. Was it through the line? Was it around the line? Or was it over the line? So immediately we're getting some extra context as to how the line was broken. Not only that, but we also have additional detail. What space and pressure were both players who made the pass and received the pass under? What phase of play did this line break happen in? And also what happened next? Was the player able to receive with forward momentum and continue the attack? What was the threat and what was the defensive structure of the opposition? Not only that, but we also capture all of this information for passes that weren't actually made. So if there's a line breaking opportunity, all of those features and details are captured by us. So what does that look like? Well, traditionally with line breaking passes, you might see something like this. Player A has passed to player B and he's broke a line. The next step then might be, well, actually, how many players were in that line and how many players were bypassed? And in this particular instance, we can see there are 3 players. If we then go an additional layer, we might actually know the entire defensive structure of the opposition, which in this case is a 4-3-3. So we know that the first line was broken of 3. But of course, with Skill Corner data, we go an extra layer again, as we know where every single player on the pitch is multiple times a second. What that means for our line breaking passes is we know the pressure that the receiver is under. We know the space that the passer is under. So for every single line breaking opportunity, we have detail, as you can see on screen here. We know the phase, the defensive shape, which line was broken, how many players were bypassed, what was the pressure and space on the pitch. Was it attempted? Was it completed? And if so, what was the threat of that particular moment and that particular pass? So what does that look like in a scenario? Well, here we're going to say that we have joined the staff of a new club, Skill Corner FC. And our midfield players are making themselves available for passing options between the first line. But for whatever reason, our centre-backs have been able to break through that first line and find them. So in the transfer window, we're going to be looking for a centre-back that can do exactly that, break through the first line. The competition we'll be looking at are Switzerland, Sweden, and Danish top divisions, and the second division in Germany. Now, this will look very familiar to a lot of people watching, a player profile for a centre-back. Of course, here we'll have 6 or 7 points that we need our centre-backs to hit. But what we're going to do in this particular video is we're going to drill down into one of these areas, which is here, breaking the lines. But we're really going to show how we can apply some specificity to this particular aspect of our player profile. Actually, how do we want them to break the lines? What sort of line breaks do we want, rather than just a generic single metric? So let's start with centre-backs across the 4 competitions who have played 1,000+ minutes. And first, we just want to understand who attempts first line breaks. And we can see here the players that are making first line break attempts. Of course, this is a total number, and this is skewed by the minutes played. We understand that. But first of all, we just want to introduce the metric. This is who is attempting a first line break. If we then go to our second step, we're adding an extra layer of detail on. And now it's who attempts through first line breaks. So this is not a centre-back who's playing wide to a full-back or a wing-back and breaking the line that way. These are real passes through the opposition into a midfield player, which is what we're looking for in this scenario. Again, we can see the total number and the total minutes played by these particular players. But now we can start to get a little bit more interesting with this. And we can actually look at the opportunities they have to make these first line breaks through the lines. When they have the opportunity, how frequently do they attempt to play it? So now we can see the players at the top of this chart are attempting 44% of their opportunities to break through that first line. So we know that these players are really proactively looking to break through that first line. And this is exactly what we want in this particular scenario. Now, as a little bit of a bonus here, I just want to speak quickly about expected threat. So for all of our actions in the Skill Corner data, we also have expected threat values. Now, this is looking at the threat of those pass attempts through the first line. And of course, the value is very small because these passes are happening often close to your own goal. It's a centre-back often playing to a midfielder through that first line. So the threat isn't going to be that high. But I think it is important just to highlight that we have this data point in our Skill Corner data. So when you are looking slightly higher up the pitch, this will be something that can really differentiate between different players from a talent ID and recruitment perspective. What our threat does is it represents the probability that the attacking team will score a goal within the next 10 seconds if this player receives a pass from the player in possession. And we calculate it using various things, including all players, the ball position and their movements, which includes their velocity and their angle, and the interactions between players as well. So that's interplayer distance and angles, looking at teammates. On the pitch here, you can see we've got a small example. These are dummy values, but you can see if we pass the player on the left here, the expected threat would be 1% as he's got two players close to him, whereas the pass in the middle of the pitch to a player who's sort of got a free run a goal, that expected threat becomes a lot higher. Again, just to note, those are dummy values on this particular slide. Okay, so back to our scenario. We can't use expected threat in this particular example as it doesn't really make sense for a centre-back breaking that first line. So what else can we use? What we've done here is we've actually applied a few criteria. So we're only going to take those centre-backs who attempt at least 33% of all of their opportunities to break through the first line. They have to tick that criteria first. Not only that, but they also have to complete 3 passes through that first line for every 30 minutes of team in possession. So we're really narrowing it down now to the players that we know are actively looking to break that first line, break through that first line, and they do complete those passes as well. How can we then differentiate them further? Well, we're actually now going to look at, can they complete passes through the second to last line? So can they even break the next line in the chain, if you like, in the defensive structure of the opposition? And when we do that, we can now start to see some real standout players, including Max Dietz here at the top of the chart. If we put a spotlight on this player, we can see that his completed passes through the first line for every 30 minutes of team possession is 3.3, which ranks him very high. Not only that, but we know that he attempts to make 43.6 of those opportunities he has to break that first line. And again, when we look for further information, we can see that when he tries to break through the second line, he also can complete 2.72 passes for every 30 minutes of team in possession. What's really interesting as well with this player is in recent weeks, he's actually started to play midfield for his club. So maybe there's something there where they've noticed his passing ability as well, and they've moved him higher up the pitch. Now, going back to the scenario and the player profile, as I mentioned, we've just zoomed in here on one particular aspect of the player profile. And of course, in a real talent ID and recruitment perspective, you'll want to tick off all of these different bullet points. But what's important is that not only did we look at just a line breaking pass, we looked at a very specific line breaking pass. It had to be through the first line. It had to have a certain percentage of the opportunities they had. So we really started to take different things into perspective. Rather than just all total line breaks, we were really quite specific what we wanted to look at for this particular player profile. Of course, we can go further as well. We can look at line breaks in different phases of play. We can look at how many players are bypassed, and we can also look at what happens next when the receiving player gets the ball. Are they able to play forward and continue the threat and momentum of an attack? For more detail around game intelligence in possession and game intelligence out of possession, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help. Thank you very much.